Okay. Hello, hello. If you are listening on YouTube or Spotify, thanks for coming to listen to me talk. First of all, wow. This is so exciting for me. I'm literally shaking with either nerves or excitement. Um, but welcome to my podcast. My name is Holly, and I just want to introduce the podcast a little bit because honestly, I don't want this to be about myself. I just want it to be like a conversation. If anything, I just want it to be about learning and obviously healing. Um, so it doesn't even matter who I am. But basically, I started this podcast because I think it would be such a good outlet for myself to just talk about my feelings. It's kind of like a almost like a virtual like journal, like almost like a verbal journal for me to kind of take track of my thoughts and keep track of how I'm doing and just really talk about things in the past and even things in the future and also things in the present that I think are really important. And it doesn't always have to be serious stuff. Like sometimes maybe I think it's important to talk about what to get at a place that you have never been to before, or how to travel somewhere new, or how to make new friends, and how to survive in 2026. So, that's kind of why I really wanted to make this. And if you're listening to this, thank you so much for listening to me. That's like crazy that someone would even want to listen to me just talk. Um, but yeah, without further ado, welcome to This Is How You Heal. And today's topic is going to be how to heal from corporate America at 19 years old. So, for a little bit of backstory, I started working in corporate when I was 19, but I actually started working way even before that. I want to say in high school it started. So I was about 15, 16, and I just worked a regular schmegular, like part-time job. Um, and I think what working from a young age taught me was that, nothing comes free in life anymore. And I think what I didn't know growing up, because luckily both of my parents wanted the best for me, and they were able to be such great providers for me and wanted me to experience way more than I ever had or they ever had in their lifetime. um so not to say that I was spoiled, but I definitely was very lucky. I was so incredibly lucky. And I people always tell me that I get like my work ethic and my grit and my drive from my dad, because my dad when he was younger was always like a hustler. So he was always working two jobs, random jobs, side quest jobs, like, and he was always working. He was not money hungry, but he had passion just to work and to be this better, bigger person. And I definitely think he passed that along to me. And both of my parents are very hardworking, but my dad just has this drive like no other. And so in high school, it was really important for me to work and want a job. And I had honestly always thought about it from I was really little, like even in middle school, I want to say. Like in middle school, I had always thought about, okay, where am I going to go to high school? Where am I going to go to college? And from such a young age, this is something that I really, really thought about and was so important to me, and that I didn't realize was not normal to think about. Like instead of thinking about Fortnite, or instead of thinking about, oh, like what should I wear to school tomorrow, it was more like, oh, like how am I going to be able to support my future at 14 years old? Which obviously you can see how this can be such a big problem to have, because obviously at such a young age you shouldn't be worrying about those things. So I started working in a high school, and it was just not it wasn't a hard job. I worked at an ice cream place. And that was honestly fine. I was making barely minimum wage. If anything, my gas to get there cost more than how much I was actually making. And it wasn't until I was 17, yes, 17, I started working for an athletic wear company. And I'm not going to say the names of any of the companies that I have worked for in the past, obviously, and even currently. But I started working for this big athletic wear corporation. And I actually was a brand educator for them, quotes around the words, because it's basically a fancy way of saying like, oh, you're a retail sales associate. But for some reason at this brand, it's very posh and very chic. So I was a brand educator, and you bet you that I was plastering that all over my resume. So, um, yeah, I started, and retail is such a very like specific and it's a very hard section and to get your life into. And what I mean by that is that it is just it can be very forgiving and very rewarding, or it can honestly be the worst years of your life. Like it is like a two-way street. Like there's no in between. And maybe I just got the short end of the stick from the retail world, but I'm still in retail now currently, just at a different position. But I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about retail. Some people love it, some people hate it. And unfortunately, I think from the ages of 17 to 19, I was genuinely drawn away and broken down and burnt down just from the world of retail. Um, and to kind of deep dive into this a little more, so I worked for this athletic wear company, and it was in a country that I spoke the language, but not enough to where I could read and write. So I could read and write some, but definitely not speak this language enough to the point where I could sell stuff in like this country. So I really knew how to conversate, and I knew how to talk to people, but very casually. So I didn't know how to professionally talk because, again, even in English, like that's talking to someone in a professional setting is very different than talking to like your friends. So I was really shocked when I got recruited for this job because I was honestly out shopping and then they approached me and I was like, sure, why not? So I started working there and I loved the people and I loved my coworkers. And I think that's really something to take into account because I did not know how much that affects your work life balance. And something that I had to learn at a very, very early age, which I will get to later on. But the people there were great at my first job, and I the work life balance was honestly great. I was still in school and was able to work on the weekends, and they paid for my transportation to get there because I was in high school, so I couldn't really drive the country that I was living in. So they paid my transportation fee, which was really nice. But customer service is just such a hard sector. Like it's so hard on you mentally. Like it is so like mentally just like draining, like so mentally draining. Like I can't even imagine like having to work customer service now, and how the hell did I do it at freaking 16, 17 years old? I don't even know. Um, but that's what kind of got me into the sector and kind of branch that I'm in now. I've always loved fashion and I love clothes. I love shopping. So obviously it was a no-brainer for me to kind of just pick like, oh, like let me work for a clothing brand because I love clothes. But it's so much deeper than that. Like especially for these posh kind of higher up more popular brands, they essentially want you to be the brand. And that's what I found out too when I was going through all these interview processes at such a young age. I found myself tweaking myself for certain companies and certain interviews based off of what I think that they would want to see. So obviously when I interview for an athletic wear company, I try to like present myself as this really sporty, like really active type of person. And what I thought was interesting is that during the interview process, I remember it wasn't more so as like, oh, what like technical skills do you have? It's more of like, oh, what are your goals in life? What drives you to wake up every day? What are you passionate about? It's not so much technical like, oh, what skills do you have that can help us on our team, or what do you bring to the table? It's more of actually getting to know your personality. And I feel like that's what a lot of people miss in the interview process, is that it is more about personality and how you carry yourself than people think. And I think now, or I guess I'll get into that later when I talk about my current job. But yeah, so that was at 17, my first official step and dive into the fashion slash retail world. And I worked there for about 8, 9 months, because I started working there my senior year of high school. And so obviously I graduate and I go to college. So I literally only worked it for maybe like half a year at that first athletic wear job. And so I come to college, and I honestly, like, when I was looking at colleges, well, even when I was in high school, this comes back to me like wanting to kickstart my career and kickstart my future so early. When I was even looking for colleges, I thought about, okay, where do I see myself after college? First, in middle school, it was like, okay, where can I see myself going to high school? Or what is going to get me into a good college? That's basically what I thought about high school. What is going to set me up for college? And then now, when I'm finished with high school and I'm going into college, I'm thinking, okay, what is going to help me find a job? What what is a place that I could live and thrive in for maybe the rest of my life? And at this point, I'm 18, and I traveled to a city, not even to look at the college, but my parents wanted to go on like a weekend trip in the US. So we all went to this one city, and I fell in love with the city, and I was like, okay, I want to live here. 4 years in college, okay, I would love to live here. So, surprise, surprise, that's where I went to college. So, I start college, and obviously, for my first year, like half of my freshman year, I'm unemployed because I'm starting school. And honestly, prompts to you if you work from high school going into college and like didn't stop working since, because I did not have that experience and I still experience burnout, which I'll get to. So if you did that, prompts to you and you're still not burnt out, because how the hell did you do it? Because I could not do it. So I obviously had like my freshman year, like the freshman year, like in college. So I definitely had the college experience, and then finally summer going into my freshman year, or sorry, summer going into my sophomore year of college, I'm thinking, okay, time to lock in, time to find a job. How are we going to do this? And so because of my previous experience already in retail, it was like a no-brainer. I was like, obviously I'm going to go back to retail. I'm already in this sector. Why would I try to push for something else that I know is going to be harder? Because at that point in my life, I really just wanted to take the easy route. Like, okay, if I know I can get a job here in this area, in this field, why wouldn't I take it? So I start applying, and I get this somehow, some way, get an interview for this position that was way above me and anything I had ever done before, for this even more popular athletic wear company. And this is where the story really gets interesting, because the idea and vision that I had at retail, or had of retail, from that moment onward was instantly shifted. and instantly changed. So I go to the interview and I'm wearing like all athletic clothes. I'm ready. I'm ready for this interview and it goes great. And I end up magically getting the job. And mind you, I'm 18, about to turn 19 this same year. Or I was turning 19 that year. And here I am basically working almost 40 hours a week on top of going to school full time. And honestly, actually, I'm doing that right now. I work full time and I go to school now. But obviously, back then, it looked so much more different because one, I was so much younger. Not so much younger, like 2 years younger. But I didn't even know how to navigate this lifestyle at all. I could barely navigate college, and here I am thinking, oh, I can navigate college and a job. Like, easy peasy. So, and so what I really want to tell this story for is that it really taught me how and what to value in a job and what to look for and what is important to you should stay important. Just because you idolize this company and this job and getting a job, because I feel like people my age and even me right now idolize the idea of getting a job and having a job because it is so valuable that we are willing to put any of our goals and our values aside just to have that. And so I worked this job. This is my second job, so again, I'm 18 turning 19 and I'm basically working 40 hours a week. But in the beginning, I was not working 40 hours a week. In fact, in the beginning, I told them this is a part-time job for me. School is my number one priority. I need to finish school so again, I can move up. And when they asked me what is your long-term goal when I was interviewing with this company, what's your long-term goal? I said, "Oh, I would love to work for this company long term. I love your values. I love everything you guys stand for. I would love to eventually move up into a corporate position." Because I was working under a district, under the district for this corporation, if that makes sense. So I was still under corporate, but under their district for for the state that I live in. And so I told them I want to go to the headquarters. I want to go all the way. I really love your company. I want to work for you guys long term. And they knew that, and they knew that school was my number one priority. I didn't ask for much, and they knew I was a student. And at first, it was great. Everything was great. I love, love, love. I adore my coworkers. Even now, I'm still friends with them, my ex coworkers. I absolutely adore them. But it just got so difficult when this job started to interfere with my work life balance. Because if you know me personally, I love to travel, I love to hang out with my friends, and yes, school and work is a priority for me, but having fun is too. And I think it's important in life now to prioritize having fun and letting loose every once in a while because I think we forget about how important that is in regulating our mind and regulating our body and that those things, having fun and hanging out with your friends, is just as important as doing the actual work and the 9 to 5. So when this job started becoming more demanding, it went from 18 hours a week to 25 hours a week to 30 hours a week to 35 hours a week. And meanwhile, I was supposed to be part-time, quote unquote, and I wasn't getting paid for overtime, that's when things started to become a big, big problem. So, and it was so mentally conflicting because I loved this job. I loved this job with the bottom of my heart. I loved the work that I was doing. I loved the people, but the real big issue was the management and the people above me. So which can be very stereotypical, especially now in the corporate setting in a bigger company scale. it can be very stereotypical. Well, obviously, like, yeah, no one's gonna like their boss because they're telling them what to do and they dictate what you do and they dictate your pay, so you have to listen to them. But in some very, very rare cases, that is not true because unfortunately I experienced that rare case. Um, so the management just became unbearable. Honestly, unbearable, and I couldn't stand it anymore. To the point where I never took off from work anymore. I stopped hanging out and prioritizing my friends, my family. This job consumed me, and to the point where I would sometimes work until midnight, until 11:30 at night when I was supposed to leave at 9 or when I was supposed to leave at 10 or 8. And then I would have to wake up early in the morning at 5 sometimes or 6. And I remember specifically the point in time where I knew that my mental was just done. And so what happened was I was already working this job for about 8 months already. And I was really saving up all the days that I could take off because I wanted to visit my family because my family does not live in the same state as me. And so I was really trying hard to not take off and really be there every day that I was scheduled because mind you, the schedule also came out sometimes the week before, even though it was supposed to come out monthly. Every month we would receive our schedule for the week, but then it turned into weekly. We would get our schedule the week before, or sometimes 3 days before the week. And so that became an issue too, because I need to know what days I'm scheduled so I can take off if I need to. And so what sucked is that I was really trying hard not to take off days and hoping that would equivalent or that would equal, oh, Holly didn't take off any days these 2 months. Okay, so we'll be a little more lenient and we'll let her take off in the future because she was so good and didn't take off. And that's what I thought. That's what my brain thought. And then, so honestly, to my surprise, obviously, when I asked to take off just for a weekend, because during this job I worked weekdays and weekends, when I asked for a weekend off, how shocked do you think I was when I was told no? And I worked this job for over 30 hours, like a week. And as a student too. And so I was shocked, and I just remember, I won't get into the full details of it, how degrading and how toxic this work environment was. Because as soon as I asked for something that I needed, and I was immediately met with no and not a negotiation, because I think a lot of people forget that in a work environment, anything is up for negotiation. If it's important to you, it's up for negotiation. And that the playing field should be fair. But I think a lot of people, including myself, get caught up in the moment and get caught up in glorifying this job and this work that you do to the point where it doesn't matter anymore. To the point where coworkers, my ex-coworkers at this job had canceled flights and trips that they had pre-booked because they were told one answer, they were told, "Oh yeah, you can take off," and then the next second they were told, "No, you can't take off. We need you here." And they had to cancel trips. Thank God I did not live through that. God knows I would not live through that and put myself through that. But if that just goes to show how truly toxic and like mentally draining it was, because it was just awful. Like I never in my life thought I would be treated like that in a work environment. I never thought I would be told that I there was expected better of me, and that this is not how we do things here at this company. This is not what we expect of you. I'm disappointed in you. From my boss, from my manager, from someone that I'm supposed to look up to as a mentor. And to hear that in a work environment just for asking to take off a day or 2 days is genuinely changes the way your brain thinks and reacts. Because honestly, from that point forward, when I was told no, I was like, okay, this has to be my number one priority. I can't ask for these days off anymore. I can't because then I'm a disappointment. Then I'm a failure. Then they're gonna fire me. XYZ. You know? And I remember leaving work that day and going home, and I remember sitting in my car and I just burst into tears. I genuinely just bursted into tears because I wanted a break so bad. But at this point in life, what do I want more? Do I want a break or do I want a job? You know? And so I just remember thinking that, and I just had conflicting thoughts in my head. Job, mental health. Job, mental health. Job, mental health. What is more important? When do I draw the line at what is more important for me? Because the pay was great. The people that I was working with, my coworkers, great. Amazing. But and it was so difficult for me because then I had this vision or this, I guess, idea in my head that whatever my management says goes. That because obviously when we see things online and we just know from assumptions, or I basically assumed that, okay, my big girl job, whatever my manager says goes. You know, they know best. I have to do what they say. It's not up for negotiation, it's not up for argument. And I think that's where I went wrong because even looking back now, I wish I stood up for myself. I wish that I said that this is important to me. This is what I need. Because honestly, I think if I had said that, I would have got let go. But it's disappointing in me, and I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't stand up for myself in that moment because it taught me a lot about what is healthy and what is not healthy in work. And too much of anything is bad for you. Too much of work is bad for you. Too much of school is bad for you. Too much of having fun is bad for you. But I was just so scared to leave this toxic environment. It was like a toxic relationship. Like, I wanted the validation from my manager and from the company because this company that I worked for has such is held to such a high standard and is on such a high pedestal that like I wanted to be a part of that team and a part of this club that was respected so much by the outside world and by the public. But I lost respect for myself. I mean, the amount of times I would go home from this job and I would just cry myself to sleep and I would just not know what to do with all these emotions. Like I had never experienced that in a work environment and I thought, okay, this is how it has to be. This is how it is when you work a real job. When you work a real job, you're not happy. That's genuinely what my brain was being coerced into thinking because I worked for this company for over a year. And when you're in that type of relationship for so long, it almost becomes second nature, like to think that way. So, my breaking point was when I was on vacation that was pre-approved because when I got hired, I gave them an ultimatum and I said, I need to be able to see my family. They are my backbone. I live here by myself. I'm only 18 years old. I need to be able to see my family. That's my non negotiable at least twice a year, once in the summer, once in the winter. And if you can't give that to me, then we don't have a deal. And my manager said, yeah, that's fine, of course. Like, see your family. Your family is so important. And I was like, okay, great. So I had never had issues with taking these 2 trips to see my family, and then all of a sudden I did. It had never ever been an issue since I had worked there, and I knew once it became an issue that I had to leave. That I had to leave because this was my non negotiable. Make me work overtime. Make me do things that are not in my job description. You can verbally abuse me all you want. But at the point where they were neglecting the time that I needed and that was promised to me, that was just a whole another level of disrespect. And that really showed me who my manager was. And yet she tried to make me feel like I was the bad person for wanting to take off these days that we had talked about so often. And yet it's my fault for not respecting the company or not respecting my team and not respecting the work that other people were doing and respecting the people that were there. But it's not about that. It's not about that. And it wasn't about that at all. But when she tried to twist the story and turn it into something else, then that is where I realized, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I was actually on that vacation. So my manager had told me, no, you have to come in and work. And I said, no, this is pre-approved. I already bought my flight. My flight was over $1,000. If you want to recompensate me, then I'll work. And then she was like, okay, fine. Like, yeah, go on your trip. I'm on my trip and I'm halfway through my trip. And I get a text saying, I need you to come back to work. You need to come back to work. You need to fly back. You need to change your flight. You need to come back to work. And I said, I can't do that. I'm in another country. And I just remember arguing with my manager. And I was like, why are we having this discussion right now? Why are you texting me, basically forcing me to go back to work when I'm on my own personal time? And I remember distinctly on that vacation, I put my 2 weeks in. I put my 2 weeks in, and thank the Lord up above, I also got a different job interview while on vacation. So I literally remember putting in my 2 weeks while also interviewing for this other company while I was out of the country. And so it was like this whole mess. But I quit that job, or I resigned, and at this point I was 19. And even interviewing for this other company, I was so scared that I was just putting myself in an even worse environment. And it just made me so sad and disheartened and just not ready and so not happy to work anymore. I had genuinely been burnt out from this job, and mind you, in my head at this time I'm thinking all jobs are like that. All corporate jobs are like that. So I interviewed for this job, and it's a traditional 9 to 5, and it's the job I have right now. The interview went great, and it's honestly for a sector of retail that I never saw myself in, but I love it, and I love the people there. And what's crazy to me is that I was still had all these toxic and bad habits from my previous work environment that carried over. For example, when I tried to or when I asked for my first day off, like it was on like a Friday into the weekend just cuz I wanted to do something. I don't know. I remember being so terrified to ask for a day off. I remember texting my friends being like, they're gonna fire me. They're gonna yell at me. I'm gonna get yelled at for asking to take this day off. And all my friends obviously like, no, what? What are you crazy? Like, they're not gonna yell at you. They're not gonna yell at you. But in my head, that's so normal. That was normal for me to get yelled at because I wanted to take days off. Or like, I wanted to work from home. That was so normal for me. And then, you know what happened? I went to my new manager at this new job and I said, "Hey, can I take this day off? Like I just want to spend some time at home. Like I'm still trying to move all my stuff in." Like, and then you know what he says? He says, "Yeah, go for it." Like, yeah, like, "Oh, that's fine. You don't need to tell me." And I was like, "Wow." I was like, "Oh my gosh, like what? Like what? Like it almost felt wrong. Like it literally almost felt wrong. Like why? What do you mean? Yes, and you're not going to argue back? Like, are you sure? Like, okay, let me walk away before you change your mind." Like, it was crazy to me. And thinking about it now, obviously it's been months and months past. I've now been at my new job for about 6 months, almost half a year. Like, it's crazy to me that I would ever let myself be treated that way in a work environment in the past. And comparing it to my new job right now that I absolutely love and I absolutely adore and I'm so lucky to have, it doesn't even compare. Like, and I think that's really important and not talked about enough how different work environments can be. Obviously, it depends on what field you go into. Like, obviously, my experience is going to be different than an engineer's experience, right? Or like someone that's in art or someone that's in, a scientist. So obviously it's going to be different, but you, I shouldn't let myself be overtaken by work and overconsumed by work just because it's coming from a higher up, if that makes sense. Like sometimes I do have to remember and be strong in myself that my opinion matters too in the workplace. And that might sound crazy, like, oh my God, Holly, like, of course, like, you should always stick up for yourself. But in this situation, it's hard because you're talking to someone that controls your salary and someone that controls if you have a job or not. So obviously, it can be very, very scary and very difficult to speak your mind when you know what little power you have. And I think it really shows the character of yourself and your leader if you're able to speak your mind, and how they respond to it is very important. And I wish I knew that so many years ago, and that's something that I will carry with me into my next job if I have a next job, because now I love my work so much that I want to stay here for as long as possible. And I think learning this at such a young age, because I started this new job when I was 20 and now I'm 21. So that's a whole like what, 19, 20, 21, 3 years in corporate and school. And I think being in this position at such a young age is so helpful because I'm so flexible and I'm so willing to learn. And I think that's what a lot of companies look for, is how resilient are you and how agile and adjustable you are. That shines through probably more than any class you could ever take or any skill you could ever learn or any certification you could ever take. I and that's why I think the interview process is so important and something that you can only get with experience. And I'm lucky enough to be able to experience it so young, but I feel like it's also a curse, because do I want to spend all these years in college wanting to have a summer vacation and wanting to have a spring break and wanting to have a winter vacation, yes, absolutely. And even now, I still find myself battling with what is more important, job security or living my life in the stage that it's at right now. Because it almost feels like I am living a different life outside of my body and outside of my age. And will that make me quit my job? Absolutely not. Like, I still love my job and I'm thankful for my job at the end of the day. But it's a blessing and a curse to be able to learn those things so young. Because I know a lot of people that are older than us, older than me, tell me, even my parents tell me, oh, when I was your age, I would have done this and I would have done that. But I think you learn things at certain ages when it's right for you. Like, I learned so much from that bad job experience that now I will probably carry with me throughout any job that I have. And I think when it's time for you to learn those things at a certain point in your life, it will happen. Like, I was meant to learn those things now. And as hard as it is to work and do school, I was meant to do that now. And I love it. And will it help me prevent from burning out? I don't know. And I think that's why it's important too, at my age, to keep the excitement in work and to really, really, really find something that you are interested in and can be interested in every day. Because yes, it's about the money, trust me, I know it is, but it also needs to be about what you see yourself doing. It can't just be about one or the other because everything waterfalls and funnels into one another. So if you like your job, you'll find a job. There are all sorts of jobs out there. I'm doing a job right now that I never thought I would. And it makes me happy and the money is good. It's not great, but it's enough. It's enough. And it allows me to live the life that I want. And I think finding a job or even applying for jobs, that's what you need to look for. Not what is the salary? What type of company is it? Like, is this a good company? Is this like a Fortune 500? I think where a lot of people go wrong is that you need to look for company values and job values or what a job is like that matches what you want in your personal life. And what I mean by that is that I want a company or I really value the people that I work with and I value making those work connections and I value having fun. And so does my company. So I think that just like people, that jobs also have a perfect fit. If a job is not meant for you, it's not meant for you. If a job is meant for you, it's meant for you. Just because you work a job does not mean that it is going to be the last job that you work for the rest of your life, because I did think that. And just because you find a company does not mean you have to stay with them for the rest of your life. There is so much opportunity in the world. Like, I honestly thought with the company that I hated, that was my only option, that I was not going to find anything better. It really is like a relationship. But it's not until you start looking you realize that the world really is your oyster and that so much is out there outside of your little bubble of your company, because even now it's hard not to get swallowed into that. And I think it's important to realize that, to every once in a while to think about yourself outside of your work, because I think even me right now, I get so lost in it. And because it's hard to not get carried away by things that are important to you. because when they're important to you, sometimes it can consume your life. But what's beautiful about having things that are important to you is that there's so many of them that it's important to have a lot of things that funnel into your life to create this ultimate version of yourself, which includes work and things you do outside of work, because things you do outside of work can affect your work life and how you do work, which is something that I never thought about before. And then doing work affects your outside life as much as it does vice versa. So I think my ultimate message for how to heal from corporate is to really think about the job you want. What type of job is it? Who is it with? What company is it with? But what can that do for you? What's in it for you? You know, like what's in it for me if I work for this job? Besides the money, obviously. But what is in it for you? Because most of the time that answer is money. But see, to heal from such a bad work experience, it has to be more than that. It has to be more than the money. Because 99% of the time, I will say, when you pick something for just the money and you start depleting yourself and bringing yourself down and forgetting your own values in the workplace, that's when shit goes south. Because outside of work, that really, really starts to affect you. So I would take from this, and I would take going into, if you're looking for a job, if you have a job right now but aren't quite sure, or maybe you don't want to work at all, and that's fine, but to really think about and to really put yourself outside of your little box of work and to think about, is your work affecting other points in your life? How is it affecting other points in your life? How valuable is this job to me? If you could quit this job right now and have another job immediately handed to you, would you do it? Those are all important things to think about. And honestly, if the answer is, yeah, if I had another job offer waiting for me right now, I would quit, then I think that's really something to consider. And think about your perfect job, but not just your perfect job, but how do you feel in your perfect job? What does your life look like having your perfect job? Is it in a high rise apartment in New York City? How does your life look when you have your perfect job? Is what ultimately will funnel into you finding your perfect job, because it's just as important as the things in your life. And that's what I think. That's what I would say. I mean, that's what I carry with me right now. Like, I do all these things in my personal life, and they need to stay important things in my life. And at, if the point happens where those things start dwindling down and my work starts ramping up, then that's when I really need to reconsider. And that's a value for me that is the most important. To not let my work consume my life. And for me to take a job and glorify it over something that I value in my personal life. Because you can't have both. You can. Surprisingly, you can. So, that is how you heal from corporate America from 19 to 21. If you're listening to me, thank you so much for listening. I truly, truly appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, not us. Follow me on Instagram at This Is How You Heal to see when my next podcast is, when my next episode is. If you want a topic you want me to talk about, if you want to come on the podcast, let me know. This is going to be super fun. This is a lot of fun for me. It's very healing for me. Obviously, this is how you heal. Um, and I want to talk about fun stuff. I want to talk about things that are interesting. I want to talk about things that matter, that I think that matter, and what you think matters too, because everything matters, honestly. Everything does. Everything affects someone. So I would love, love, love to hear what you guys want me to talk about. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you so much. If this helped you even a little bit, that's all I need to hear. That's all I need to know.